I was scrubbing a dead man's toilet when I learned I'd inherited $40 million. Before I tell you how a domestic service professional, like me ended up in that position, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss stories like this. And if you end up enjoying this one, a like really helps get these stories to more people who need to hear them. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The 5:47 a.m. subway from Astoria to Manhattan smelled like someone's breakfast burrito and broken dreams. I was 28 years old, holding an industrial-sized bottle of marble cleaner between my knees, watching a guy in a $4,000 suit scroll through his phone without seeing me. That was my superpower, I guess. Invisibility. I'd been cleaning Robert Ashford's penthouse for 3 years. Every Tuesday and Friday, 9 a.m. sharp, except I had my own key and Robert was never there. That was the arrangement. Elite Domestic Services sent me because my mother, Maria Torres, had cleaned that same penthouse for 25 years before her arthritis got too bad. The Ashfords trusted the Torres women. We knew how to be invisible in their marble and mahogany world. Robert Ashford was my stepfather, technically. My mother married him 5 years ago in a city hall ceremony so quiet, I almost missed it. I was 23, working retail and taking community college classes I couldn't afford to finish. Robert wore a navy suit. My mother wore the nicest dress from her closet. I wore confusion. They'd known each other for decades, obviously, but love? I couldn't see it. They were polite, careful, like roommates who respected each other's space. Robert called her Maria. She called him Robert. I called him Robert too, because Dad felt like a word that belonged to someone else. 3 days ago, Robert died. 73 years old, heart attack in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books he'd probably never read. His 3 children, his real children, I always thought of them, were devastated. I saw it on the news. Caroline Ashford Bennett, elegant in black, giving a statement about their beloved father and pillar of the community. Jamie Ashford, the documentary filmmaker, looking hollowed out. Victoria Torrey Ashford, the youngest, sobbing into her husband's shoulder. I felt bad for them. I did, but I still had to clean the penthouse. Elite Domestic Services doesn't stop for grief. Someone had to polish the bathroom fixtures before the estate sale, before the family divided up the pieces of Robert's carefully constructed life. So there I was, scrubbing the toilet in the master bathroom with the imported Italian tile, wearing my company polo and cheap Target jeans, when I heard the front door open. My heart jumped. Nobody was supposed to be here. I stood up, pulled off my rubber gloves. Hello? Miss Torres? A man's voice, careful and professional. I recognized him immediately when I walked into the living room. Marcus Chen, Robert's attorney. I'd seen him exactly twice, once at the wedding, once at a dinner where I'd served appetizers because my mother was too nervous to handle the fancy people alone. He was holding a leather portfolio. His expression was strange. Part lawyer, part something else I couldn't name. Mr. Chen. I didn't know anyone would be here. I can come back. No, please. Actually, I came to find you. Your mother said you'd be here. My stomach tightened. Is my mother okay? She's fine. But Emma, we need to talk about your stepfather's will, about your inheritance. I almost laughed. Inheritance? Right. Maybe Robert left me $5,000, maybe 10. Rich people did that sometimes, right? Left their staff a little something to feel good about themselves. I appreciate that, Mr. Chen, but honestly, whatever it is, I'd like to give it to my mother. She knew him longer. Emma. He set the portfolio on Robert's $30,000 Italian leather sofa. Your stepfather left you $40 million, plus this penthouse. The floor tilted. The room swam. There's a mistake, I whispered. We weren't even close. My mother married him 5 years ago. I barely knew him. Marcus Chen gave me a look I couldn't read. Something between pity and respect and fear. There's no mistake. The will is very specific. But Emma, you need to understand something. Robert's other children are contesting it. They believe you and your mother manipulated a dying man. He paused. The hearing is scheduled in 3 weeks. They're very motivated, and they're very connected. I couldn't breathe. $40 million. The penthouse worth at least another $60 million total, dropping into my life like a bomb. Why would he? I don't understand. Robert left a letter. For you, specifically. It's in the portfolio. Marcus gestured to it. Read it when you're ready. But Emma, get a lawyer. A good one. His children aren't going to let this go without a fight. He left. I stood in that pristine living room, surrounded by furniture that cost more than I'd made in my entire life, and stared at the leather portfolio like it might explode. I should have opened it right then. I should have read Robert's letter, tried to understand. Instead, I grabbed my cleaning supplies and ran. My mother's rent-controlled apartment in Queens was small. 2 bedrooms, water stains on the ceiling, the constant smell of somebody else's cooking seeping through the walls. But it was home. Maria had lived there for 30 years, raised me there, kept it spotlessly clean despite the building falling apart around her. I found her sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, not watching her novella, not making tea, just sitting. Her hands folded in front of her, staring at nothing. Mommy? She looked up, her face crumpled. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Mija, sit down. I need to tell you something. I should have told you years ago. My hands were shaking. Mr. Chen said Robert left me $40 million. $40 million, Mommy? Why would he do that? We barely spoke. He was your husband, not my father. I was just... Emma, her voice broke. Sit down. Before I could move, someone pounded on the door. Not knocked, pounded. My mother's face went white. I opened it. Caroline Ashford Bennett stood there in a black suit that probably cost more than my car, flanked by 2 men in similar suits, lawyers, obviously. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her jaw was set like steel. Emma Torres? Yes? She shoved papers into my hands. You're being served. You and your mother are going to return every penny you stole from my family, and then I'm going to make sure you both face fraud charges. My mother made a small sound behind me. A whimper. Something hot flashed through my chest. Rage, maybe. Or just exhaustion with rich people who thought they owned everything, including the right to show up at my door throwing accusations. Get off my mother's doorstep, I said quietly, or I'm calling the police. Caroline's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected me to push back. You manipulated a grieving widower. You wormed your way into his life, pretended to care about him, and convinced him to change his will when he was vulnerable and dying. That's elder abuse. That's fraud. I cleaned his toilets, I said, my voice rising. I scrubbed his floors. I never asked him for anything. I didn't even know he was going to... Liar, Caroline hissed. Gold-digging, social-climbing liar. My father worked his entire life to build his legacy, and you think you can just steal it because your mother spread her... That's enough. My mother's voice cut through the hallway, sharp as glass. She'd stood up. All 5'2" of her, arthritis in her hands and exhaustion in her eyes, but she stood between me and Caroline Ashford Bennett like she was 10 feet tall. You will not speak to my daughter that way. Your daughter, Caroline said, is a thief. Read the will, my mother said coldly. Read it carefully, and then ask yourself why your father, your perfect, honorable father, left everything to the cleaning woman's daughter. Ask yourself what kind of man does that, unless he has a very good reason. The lawyers exchanged glances. Caroline stared at my mother. What are you saying? I'm saying get off my doorstep before I show you exactly what your father was hiding all these years. Caroline left, but the look on her face told me this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I hired a lawyer the next day. Karen Rodriguez, a scrappy attorney working out of a cramped office in Brooklyn, who took one look at the case and said, I hate rich people who think they own everything. Let's destroy them. She was exactly what I needed. First things first, Karen said, spreading documents across her desk. We need to understand why Robert Ashford left you this money, because Caroline's right about one thing. It doesn't make sense on the surface. You weren't close to him. You weren't his biological daughter. You were just his stepdaughter for 5 years. So, how do we prove he wasn't manipulated? Karen pulled out a thick folder. We document the relationship. Every interaction, every conversation, every piece of evidence that shows Robert knew exactly what he was doing. Over the next week, I learned things about my stepfather that made the world tilt sideways. Bank statements showing monthly deposits to my mother. Not random amounts. Exactly $2,147, like clockwork, for 28 years. 28 years. Since before I was born. Do the math, Karen said quietly. I did. 2,147 times 12 months, times 28 years. 954,696. Nearly $1 million paid out over my entire lifetime. Why that specific amount? I whispered. Karen showed me another document, a spreadsheet in Robert's handwriting. Rent, $1,450. Utilities, $200. Food, $850. Emma's needs, $347. He'd calculated my mother's exact living expenses, down to the penny, and paid them every month for 28 years. Emma, Karen said carefully, this isn't what a man does for his wife's daughter. This is what a man does when he's supporting his child. No, that's impossible. My mother said he was a mistake she made when she was young. A guy she met at a party. She never gave me details, but did she ever explicitly say Robert wasn't your father? I tried to remember. Every conversation. Every time I'd asked. My mother always said the same thing. Your father isn't in our lives. It's just you and me, Mija. Never a name. Never a story. Just absence. I need to talk to my mother. Emma, wait. There's more. Karen pulled out another folder. Robert opened a safe deposit box in your name the day you were born, May 14th, 1997. You've had access to it your entire life. You just didn't know it existed. She slid a key across the desk. The bank vault was cold and smelled like metal and old paper. The safe deposit box was small, unremarkable. Inside, photographs. Hundreds of them. Me as a baby, held by my mother outside a hospital. Me at my kindergarten graduation, standing in the back row. Me at my 8th grade science fair, holding my volcano project. Me at my high school graduation, cap slightly crooked, beaming. Every single photograph was taken from a distance. Different angles, different zoom levels. Like someone had been following me my entire life. Documenting every moment but never getting close enough to touch. Quick pause. If you're hooked on this story, hit that like button. It takes half a second and helps more than you know. Okay, back to the chaos. At the bottom of the box, report cards. Every single one, from kindergarten through 12th grade. And in the margins, in Robert's handwriting, notes. Excellent progress in math. Teacher says you're kind to classmates. Proud of you for helping the new student feel welcome. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped them. He'd been reading my report cards, responding to them, parenting in secret, in the margins, where nobody else would see. And underneath everything, a document. Official, medical. DNA paternity test results. Robert James Ashford. Emma Sophia Torres. Probability of paternity. 97%. Dated May 16th, 1997. 2 days after I was born. He knew. From the very beginning, he knew I was his daughter. I confronted my mother that night. She was making tea, her hands wrapped around the mug for warmth even though it was May. Her arthritis was bad. It was always bad. You lied to me, I said. No preamble, no softness. She closed her eyes. Emma. He's my father. Robert is my father. And you both just kept me a secret. Like I was something to be ashamed of? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Mommy? Because I found the DNA test. I found the photographs. I found 28 years of payments adding up to nearly $1 million. So tell me, what was it like? My mother set down her tea. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. I was 28 when I met your father. He was 39, married, with 3 children. I cleaned his home office 1 day a week. It wasn't an affair, Emma. It was one time. One mistake. I found out I was pregnant 2 months later. The words hung in the air like smoke. Why didn't you tell him to leave his wife? Why did you settle for this? Maria's voice turned to steel. Because I didn't want his other children to grow up the way I did, without a father. Because I saw how much he loved them. Because Caroline was 16, Jamie was 12, Tori was 7. They needed him. And I didn't? You had me, she said simply. You had me every single day. They had a father who came home to them, but was always somewhere else in his head. You tell me who had it better. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. Instead, I sat down at her tiny kitchen table and put my head in my hands. He wanted to claim you, my mother whispered. When you were born, he begged me to let him divorce Diane, to make everything public. But Emma, his wife, had just lost her mother. Caroline was struggling in school. The family business was going through a scandal. There was never a good time. There's never a good time, Mommy. That's just an excuse. You're right, she said quietly. But I saw what the world does to bastard children. I saw how people would treat you, what they would say about you and about me. I wanted you to have dignity. I wanted you to grow up without the stain of being the other woman's daughter. I looked at her, really looked at her. The lines around her eyes, the way her shoulders curved inward from decades of cleaning other people's homes. The simple wedding ring on her finger, the one I'd always thought was too expensive for someone on her stated income. You sacrificed everything, I whispered. You let people think you were nobody. You let me think I was nobody. To protect me from a truth I deserved to know. I let you be somebody, she corrected, without his world judging you, without his name weighing you down. You grew up knowing you were loved completely by one person, not conditionally by 2. The legal documents arrived 3 days later. Caroline wasn't messing around. She'd hired the biggest law firm in Manhattan, filed a formal challenge to the will, and released a statement to the press. The Ashford family is devastated by the predatory actions of Maria Torres and her daughter Emma, who manipulated our grieving father in his final months. We intend to fight this fraud with every resource at our disposal. The media exploded. My face was on page 6. The New York Post ran the headline, "Cleaning Woman's Daughter Steals $40 million Fortune." Someone spray-painted "thief" on my mother's building. A photographer followed me to work. Another one waited outside my apartment. Karen called. We need to prepare for the deposition. Caroline's going to come at you hard. She's going to paint you as a calculated gold digger who seduced a vulnerable man. I barely spoke to him. She doesn't care about facts. She cares about narrative. So we need a better one. The deposition was brutal. 6 hours in a conference room with Caroline's lawyers circling like sharks. How many times did you visit Robert Ashford's home before your mother married him? Approximately 150 times per year for 3 years. I was cleaning it. Convenient access to a vulnerable elderly man. He was 62 and healthier than I am. Did you discuss his finances with him? I discussed the streak on his bathroom mirror and whether he preferred lavender or unscented floor cleaner. Why would a man leave $40 million to someone who barely knew him? I looked directly at Caroline, sitting at the end of the table in her $3,000 suit. Why don't you ask him? I said quietly. Oh, wait, you can't. Because apparently none of you knew him as well as you thought. Caroline's jaw clenched. Careful, Miss Torres. Or what? You'll sue me? Little late for that? Her lawyer intervened. Mrs. Ashford Bennett has provided testimony that Robert seemed under influence in his final months. We have medical records suggesting cognitive decline. A handwriting expert claims his signature on the final will looks pressured. Karen stood up. Your Honor, we have evidence that conclusively proves Robert Ashford's intentions were sound, deliberate, and based on a relationship spanning 28 years. But presenting this evidence will cause significant emotional harm to parties in this courtroom. Caroline sneered. I'm not afraid of your fake evidence. It's not fake, I said quietly. But once I show it, you can't unsee it. Your family can't unknow it. You'll spend the rest of your lives wishing you'd let this go. Try me, Caroline said. I looked at Jamie, sitting behind his sister. He'd been quiet through the entire proceeding, just watching with those careful eyes. Documentary filmmaker eyes, trained to see the story beneath the story. I looked at Tori, dabbing at her tears with a tissue. I thought about the photograph I'd found in Robert's study. Caroline at 16, playing piano at her father's birthday party, his face glowing with pride. I could keep the secret. Give up the money. Let them win. Let them keep their perfect father. But then I remembered every parent-teacher conference I'd attended alone while Robert sat 3 rows back. Every birthday he missed because he was at Caroline's college graduation, or Jamie's film premiere, or Tori's wedding. Every time I called him Robert instead of Dad, because shame has a specific sound. Present the evidence, I told Karen. Karen projected the DNA test results onto the courtroom screen. Emma Torres is Robert Ashford's biological daughter. She was born May 14, 1997, when Robert was 39 years old and already married with 3 children. The courtroom erupted. Caroline's face went white, then red. That's impossible. You fabricated this. We can run a sibling DNA test right now, Karen said calmly. Emma, Caroline, Jamie, and Victoria all share a father. The question isn't whether Robert Ashford had an affair. It's whether his legitimate children can handle the fact that their perfect father was a liar for 28 years. Jamie stood up and walked out. Tori started crying. Not quiet tears. Sobbing. Caroline sat down like her strings had been cut. Diane Ashford, Robert's widow, silent until now, stood up slowly. Her voice was pure ice. This hearing is over. I will not sit here while you people desecrate my husband's memory with these lies. Mrs. Ashford, the judge said gently, the DNA evidence is conclusive. Diane looked at me for the first time. Really looked. I watched recognition dawn, the green hazel eyes, the shape of my nose, the way I held my shoulders that was pure Robert. I know, she whispered, and I realized she always knew. The judge ruled in my favor. The inheritance stood, all $40 million plus the penthouse. Caroline's challenge was dismissed with prejudice. I won. But standing outside the courthouse, watching Caroline drive away in her Mercedes without looking back, I didn't feel like a winner. The media exploded again. Secret Ashford heir revealed. Billionaire's hidden daughter wins $40 million battle. My photo was everywhere, no longer invisible, just exposed. Caroline released a statement through her lawyer. My siblings and I are devastated by these fabrications. We are considering our options. Jamie sent me a single text. I need time. Tori showed up at my apartment 3 days later. She'd been crying. Her eyes were swollen and red. I remember you, she said. I was 7 years old, and you were this baby our housekeeper brought sometimes. I thought you were her granddaughter. I used to give you my old toys. She held out something, a stuffed rabbit, worn and faded. You left this at our house once. My dad kept it. I found it in his closet with all the photos of you. I took the rabbit, felt its weight. I'm sorry, I said. For what? You didn't do anything wrong. He did. Her voice cracked. He lied to all of us. You just got a different version of the lie. 8 months later, I moved into the penthouse. Not because I loved it, but because my mother insisted. Don't hide from what you've earned, she said. Your father hid you for 28 years. Don't hide yourself. So, I didn't. I enrolled in nursing school at Columbia, full-time, using the fund Robert had set up. I hired my mother's cleaning company to maintain the penthouse, paid them triple rate. I set up the Maria Torres Scholarship for first-generation college students from working-class families. I started therapy. I kept one room exactly as Robert left it, his study. I did my homework at his desk. Sometimes I talked to him. I'm using your money to clean up your mess. I'm becoming a nurse because I'm tired of cleaning up after people who think they're better than me. I'm everything you taught me to be, even though you weren't brave enough to teach me yourself. I didn't know if I'd forgiven him, but I was learning to live with the contradiction of loving and resenting the same ghost. The Columbia nursing school ceremony was packed. Strangers filled most seats, but 3 faces made me stop. My mother, crying with pride. Tori, holding up her phone to record. And Jamie, in the back row, exactly where Robert used to sit. At the podium, I didn't mention the inheritance or the scandal. My mother worked as a housekeeper for 30 years. She cleaned toilets in homes worth more than she'd make in her lifetime. People looked through her like she was invisible. But she was the most visible person in my life. She taught me that dignity doesn't come from how people see you. It comes from how you see yourself. This scholarship isn't about me. It's about every person who's ever worked a job where people don't bother to learn your name. It's about every kid who's been told they're not good enough because of where they came from. My father tried to hide me because he thought I'd be treated as lesser. But my mother raised me to know, nobody can make you lesser unless you believe it yourself. After the ceremony, Jamie approached. Caroline's here, in the parking garage. She won't come in, but... He trailed off. I found her sitting in her car, gripping the steering wheel. I tapped on the window. I'm not here to reconcile, Caroline said without rolling it down. I don't know if I ever can. I know, I said. But... Her voice cracked. You look like him. When you talk, your hands move like his. And that pisses me off. I know. He loved you, she whispered. I saw the photos. The way he looked at you, even from a distance. And I'm so angry that he got to love you without the burden of raising you. He got all the joy of you and none of the work. While my mother raised his kids alone because he was always working late. I bet he was with you. Sometimes, I admitted. Not as much as you think. We sat in silence. A shared understanding that Robert failed us all, just in different ways. Finally, Caroline said, Congratulations on nursing school. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. I stand in my study now, Robert's study, looking at the photograph of young Maria holding infant me. I finally understand. My mother kept the secret not just to protect Robert's family, but to protect me from spending my childhood as the bastard, the other woman's daughter, the scandal. It was an act of love, even if it was also an act of erasure. I've added new photos to the desk. My mother at the scholarship ceremony. Tori and me getting coffee. Jamie texting me a meme. Even one of Caroline from a distance, the way Robert used to photograph me. People ask me if I wish my father had been brave enough to claim me publicly. If I wish I'd grown up with the Ashford name, the private schools, the opportunities. But here's what I know now. I had something his legitimate children didn't. I had a mother who chose me every single day, who sacrificed everything so I could have dignity, who taught me that how you earn your money matters more than how much you have. My father left me $40 million. But my mother gave me something worth more. She taught me I was enough, just as I was, without his name, or his world, or his acknowledgement. The inheritance was his attempt at apology. But I didn't need his apology. I needed what I always had, my mother's love, which came without conditions or shame. That's the difference between what you are given and what you earn. So what do you think? Would you have revealed the secret, or kept it to protect people who called you a thief? Drop a comment and let me know. I actually read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. If you want more real stories about ordinary people in extraordinary situations, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Coming up next, I've got a story about a teacher who discovered her student's family secret. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.